Welcome to the Fivestack. My name is Dean. That is Zev Shalev, narrative.org. I get your first name mixed up with Lev Parnas, who I just podcasted with.
Easy to do that.
Lev Zev. And like he reminded me several times. I'm like, I'm so sorry, dude. And the really funny part is we were, just kind of shooting the shit. And he goes, "Oh, Michael Cohen's watching. Do you want to send him an invite?" I'm like, "I don't even know how to do that." He's like, "Yeah, just press this little button and, check Michael Cohen." I'm like, "All right." So we had Michael Cohen on for a solid 20 minutes, and it was fucking hilarious.
How so? Tell me about it.
Oh man, it was awesome. I mean, these are figures, right? These are historical figures in a historical time in America's authoritarian takeover. And these are guys fighting, that have been caught as part of the takeover, part of the MAGA crew. They've turned their back on him. They're trying to inform people. They do a great podcast, him, Malcolm Nance, Michael Cohen, Lev Parnas. They do this incredible podcast called Raw Unfiltered. And it was hilarious because it was out of nowhere. I flipped my screen on and there's Michael Cohen. He's like, "Hey, Dean, how's it going? I just became a Canadian," he says, because he's got Canadian roots.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's just breaking news. I just became a Canadian yesterday. Yeah, they all are. He's trying to escape. I'm like, "What are you doing? Trying to get up here?" So he goes, "I don't know. We'll see what happens." But anyway, it was a great podcast, and it leaned into a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today with the top 5 stories democracy lovers need to be aware of. With you, my friend, and you're good. I mean, I know you're busy. I know you've got, you look.
My current thing is that my prompter isn't working, but that's other than that, pretty good.
You need a prompter for this?
I don't need a prompter, but I put all the notes up in order, so that way I don't have to.
Oh, okay.
I've got a full studio here. You should come see it. It's really nice.
Yeah, I've never been invited over. I would have thought that I would have gotten an invite from you and your partner for like some dinner maybe or something.
You are invited at any time. I got to tell you something about Michael Cohen. I've been a little bit critical of Michael Cohen in my history. And sometimes I've been a little bit critical of Lev too, because as much as I like both of those gentlemen, they sort of represent the people who came out of the Trump world.
Yeah.
And flipped. And I get that they are building a new kind of future for themselves, but I always get a bit cynical around these guys who helped enable Trump and make Trump, flipping around and then becoming the, these sort of saviors of the left, when in fact, that's not really their DNA. And in some cases, it's very true and honest, and this is how they feel. But in many cases, I feel like maybe they're just opportunists sometimes. And in Michael Cohen's case, I think, I don't to start a beef with him or anything like that, but I thought
I don't think he cares, to be honest with you.
I don't think he cares. But I feel like he sometimes has played he's just been a provocateur. I don't think he's been necessarily the most reliable of witnesses through some of these things that he's talked about, and I don't think he's told the whole truth about what happened in 2016, 17, and
hell on. He doesn't appear to be a shrinking violet. Like he's pretty right on. I'm sure he'd talk about it. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've asked him a couple of questions about things, and he's point blank refused to answer. So, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I should invite him. We should invite him on and see what's going on. Lev, I think, is a different story, because I think Lev has actually had a big transformation. I think he's sort of really evolved. But even still, some questions I've asked him he dodges quite readily.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not saying that there's anything sinister about it. I just think that these guys are doing the best they can under the circumstances in trying to defend their country. But, on the other hand, I always wonder if there's other voices out there that maybe aren't getting attention, because these guys are. And there's sort of these, they've developed these right-wing political followings, and then, and translated that into the headlines, into left-leaning politics, but it hasn't necessarily always been the best voices to be heard on this topic.
Well, keep in mind, both these guys served some pretty serious jail time.
Right. Yeah.
For Donald Trump. So they're grinding that, axe, and they're entitled to. I think that they've also got some really interesting information nobody else knows, specifically from what's behind Donald Trump's curtain. what's the
Yeah.
Wizard of Idiots doing? And what are his intentions? And it's I think we've moved sort of past over the past several months to a couple of years, specifically since Trump has come back into office for his 47th. Um, it we live in a time where you can't really judge intentions as long as those intentions align with democracy versus authoritarianism.
Mm,
And I think that values being what they are and everybody being different and everybody's life experience and shared experience being different, I don't want to write off any ally when it comes to fighting for democracy, when it comes to telling the truth. And I know Donald Trump had enablers for a long time. And I mean, there are a lot of people that got sucked in by that guy over the past 50 odd years, right? He has suckered people, he uses people, he has fucked people over. And a lot of those people want their pound of flesh now. And a lot of those people are making a little bit of money trying to get their pound of flesh. And I applaud it. And the reason why I applaud it, guys like Michael, who was great, really enjoyed him on the podcast. And the reason why I'm not looking for bad intentions with either of these two gentlemen is because I really do believe that everybody deserves an opportunity. We talked about Jeffrey Toobin, right? Jeffrey Toobin got caught giving it a poll on a Zoom meeting, and he got fired by the New Yorker, got fired by CNN, and somehow the guys, like, this is in the middle of a meeting with some of the world's greatest journalists. He just decided he'd go ahead and give it a yank. And it was on Zoom.
Right.
And he's back on CNN 2 years later, and we sort of briefly talked about that. Michael Cohen's still twisting in the wind. He's doing podcasts. He's doing a bunch of different stuff just to make life work, right? Mea Culpa, his podcast. He does some stuff with Midas Touch. He does some stuff on his own. His Substack is great. And he wrote a book. I mean, this is the way a lot of people will deal with setbacks in their lives. And, for that setback to be at the hands of the world's biggest piece of shit that everybody hates, I can get behind those guys like in a heartbeat. And again, the information that they have, like even just going, talking with Lev about some of the stuff he's put on his Substack, which was kind of borne out by a conversation you and I had yesterday, because you're on the tip as well. Like you truly do understand who this benefits. Putin's pulling the strings. All roads lead to the Kremlin. All roads lead to Moscow when it comes to what we're going to deal with today, in large part, whether it be, the 5% GDP to NATO, each country, including Canada and the EU, have committed to it, whether it be Trump losing his mind at NATO again today, jumping around like a complete idiot, whether it be the strikes on the Fordo nuclear enrichment facility, not doing the damage people thought they were doing, and then, Putin behind the scenes. Lev was talking about it 2-3 days ago, 4 or 5 days ago, phone calls that were happening in real time. And Michael Cohen had intel and Malcolm Nance had intel. That's kind of the benefit of Substack, is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, it doesn't matter the history that you've had. If you're willing to contribute to the conversation about preserving and protecting democracy in North America and Western civilization, we're kind of all on the same fucking team here. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's generally quite true. You want the enemies of democracy to be battled by the people who are in favor of democracy, no matter what your ideology is and no matter how you got there. If you're willing to stand up for the Constitution, stand up for democracy, then we're all allied together. Then, that's then you are an ally for sure. In some cases, I'm just being picky about Cohen and less so about Lev. But I do think I'd love to hear more about some truths that Cohen hasn't quite got into in the past, and maybe we'll still has time to reveal those.
You said he'd jump on with us anytime, so yeah,
sure.
We'll have him on.
We'll have him on. Let's ask those questions. This is the top 5 stories of the day, the Fivestack, and we begin at number 5. Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez are tying the knot in Venice this weekend in what's been called one of the most extravagant weddings in recent memory. The Amazon founder has essentially bought out the entire city. He's reserving the entire Amman Venice hotel, 100 private jets for guests, and most of the water taxis. But activists aren't rolling out the red carpet. They're planning a protest that includes an inflatable crocodile under the slogan "No Space for Bezos" in the canals of Venice. So this is going to be a huge thing this weekend. It's ostentatious, completely ostentatious. This particular yacht that he's got is worth $500 million. I mean, this is such an expensive yacht. And it's not environmentally friendly. There'll be Greenpeace activists all over the place. It's the showiest thing to be having in the middle of what is not necessarily the most showiest time. What do you think, Dean?
Did I hear that the wedding was going to cost $25 million? Did I hear that correctly?
It's something like that. It's super expensive. There's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
$5
25
million
million.
ring. Yeah, it's all very like
$5 million ring. He's
yeah,
rented out basically downtown Venice, the
yeah.
nicest
It's
parts of
for
Venice.
200 to 250
200
guests.
guests.
So yeah,
Um, I'm of two schools of thought here.
oh,
I feel the same way about Elon Musk, and good for the people of Venice. Go ahead and make that day as
yeah.
memorable for the Bezos family as possible. I'm of two schools of thought here. Jeff Bezos was everybody's favorite nerd when he was running a bookstore online, and he had a vision, and he beat the streets with proposals, and he went to thousands of meetings asking for money to create this company called Amazon. And he deferred every major payment that he was supposed to get when he was building Amazon into building fulfillment centers, and sat behind a Berkshire Hathaway kind of plastic desk like Warren Buffett. This man
I
is
love that story,
self-made.
by the way. That
Yeah,
that story about that desk is,
the fold-out desk.
still
Yeah,
rings.
he's still
Yeah,
use it.
it's amazing. And now
Um,
look where he is today.
well, yeah, and I love Buffett too because he's humble about it. And Jeff Bezos used to be that guy, but then he got a couple $1 trillion. And then he looked around at his wife. He started working out, and he started taking judo or taekwondo. And that little nerd turned into this buff little trillionaire, right? Like
Hmm.
who was like, I don't have to be with my wife anymore. I can go and get a Botox made up. And listen, all the best to both him and his new wife, girlfriend, whatever. She does not look the same as she did 15 years ago. So you got these two people who've come into all this money, and she's latched on for dear life. And Jeff, it feels like in the past 10 years, with Blue Origin and his enormous wealth and control over supply chains and just the trillions of dollars that he's worth, it feels like he's kind of gone, all right, I'm going to enjoy this. All right.
He
I'm
is.
going to enjoy the trappings of being one of the richest guys in the world, a game-changing human being in the history of economics, in the history of this world. I'm going to fucking go for it, and I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. That kind of autonomy speaks to me a little bit. Same with Elon Musk, where he's like firing rockets into outer space. I'm like, that kind of autonomy is where you want to work to get to. So on one hand, I'm like a little bit jealous, and on the other hand, it's so douchey. Like,
It really is.
the trappings and the entitlement and what he's doing, rubbing in people's faces. I know he's getting married, but the whole thing is douchey. But keep in mind, he did pay his ex-wife about $1.5 billion for the privilege. So, it's not like this doesn't come without cost.
Look, he's a hugely successful entrepreneur. There's no doubt about it. What I struggle with is his association with this presidency. Him and Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and that whole crowd of tech billionaires who have this vision of the world that they're the only ones who can fix everything, and because of their ability to raise billions of dollars, I guess, over the years and blaze a trail that has been amazing in terms of the Silicon Valley infrastructure and all
Sure.
the stuff that came out of Silicon Valley. But they're now associating with this autocratic ruler. They all sold us this vision of democracy, and everyone is going to get access to media, and they could all do all these. It's all going to be all about the people and about sharing people's information and equity around the world. And it turns out that it's not about that at all. It's about these white guys saying that they want to rule the planet still, and they'll do anything they can to rule that planet. And if it means stepping over your gay and lesbian rights or any of those things, no problem. They'll do that. If they want to reinvent the masculine male, of the 1950s with their buff, steroided bodies and their hot little girlfriends, well, that's fine. They can do that, but they're not going to give those women any positions of power around them. They're going to keep them subjugated as sex dolls, basically. And you saw that when she was at the inauguration, was it, of Donald Trump? And
Yeah.
Zuckerberg couldn't take his
She
eyes
dumped him
off
out.
her assets.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, this is it's just it's a cynical going back into sort of the past. It's sort of this last vestige of the male man trying to, the straight man maybe, trying to save their hierarchy position, save their ability to rule over everybody
Keep
else.
their place in the white guy line. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, but it's been done with so much cost and so much hurt, and there's people who are getting their Medicaid and Medicare potentially cut this weekend in that big, beautiful bill. And this guy's parading around in a $500 million, yacht in Venice, and ruining the environment at the same time because it's made out of some rare teak or something that comes out of Burma or something. That this is it's a lack of understanding of what's really going on in the world. It's a lack of optics. It's tasteless in
It's
so many
tone
ways.
deaf.
Yeah, it's tone deaf. That's it.
It's entirely tone deaf. And listen, there are a lot. Lauren Sanchez, that's her name. Yes, she does look like a rubber doll. Listen, there are a lot of people in here that don't have that kind of money in this chat, in this podcast. Sitting behind
Actually, all of us have not got that kind of money put together. I think you still don't have that.
So we're instantly, listen. I'll look at this from a perspective of wants and needs. I have everything I need. I don't want anything. I'm a minimalist. I live very, very small. In the past several years, I divested myself of absolutely everything material with the exception of a car. So, and I'll tell you why I did it. One is I had to. The other one is it was like, I don't like having to take care of all these things. I don't like it. So part of me respects the fact that guys like him or guys like Elon have so much and they know where everything is. It's like a chessboard of materialistic bullshit. But I'm not externally motivated. Like my goals in life are not to become multi-millionaire. My goals in life are to be a happy individual, to be able to problem solve, to be good to my kids, to be empathetic, to help people around me. That's the fruit of this life. It's good character and acts for the common good. I don't know anything that Jeff Bezos has done that's an act for the common good or screams great character. Same with Elon Musk. They'll tell you that the way that they've changed the world and the riches that it has brought them has helped the world, but it hasn't. Do you know how many shops that have tried to unionize Amazon shops here in Canada? One. Do you know how many Amazon shops have been shut down in Canada for trying to unionize? One in Quebec. As soon as they unionized, he had people outside while they were protesting. These are Amazon employees. This is in the winter, turn on a water faucet to spray Canadians who were protesting so that they could get fair wages and work conditions where they weren't always getting injured, right? Bezos is a piece of shit. Materialistically, though, you can look at what he's accomplished and understand why he's going to spend $25 million on a wedding and $500 million on a yacht with Burmese teak. You kind of can. Not that I ever would. But there's a whole bunch at play here, but it is douchey, it is gross, it is tone deaf, and as always, I like to be the fly in the ointment. I hope protesters make this the most memorable wedding in the history of rich white guy memorable weddings.
The tone deaf description is so good because here's a man who could spend half of his fortune and solve so many of the world's problems, who could actually be helping the people who don't have Medicaid, could help feed people in all these programs that have been cut by Doge and the like. All of them together, if they actually put their resources together to do something meaningful for the world, could actually solve a lot of the world's problems. Instead, they're backing this guy who's turning America into an autocratic state, whose entire goal is to rid us all of democracies, to take our voting rights away, to return us to a sort of era where abortions are not legal, where you have to have these backroom abortions, where you have no rights in terms of your own privacy. This is the kind of weird surveillance world that they want us to step into. These are the guys that are rigging the elections and are peeking into your bedrooms through your digital data.
Or at least building software to help the government to peek into your bedrooms.
It's really, these guys are not good guys. And I don't know. I used to think of them as good guys. I used to think, well, these are pioneers. These are people who are blazing a trail. And somewhere along the way, they sort of took the wrong turn. I don't know if that's Kurt Jarvin or whatever it is, but somewhere along the way, they just sort of became douchebags.
Yeah. And money and influence and power has that innate ability to take a normal human being and turn them into a massive piece of shit. Elon Musk's approval rating 10 years ago is through the roof. He's one of the most hated people in the world today. Jeff Bezos, one of the most hated people in the world today. Mark Zuckerberg, same thing. He's kept a low pro for a very specific reason. And all of them have done something that is unforgivable, if you ask me. We were just talking about the wedding. Let's get down to the character of each one of these tech oligarchs. They've all given millions of dollars, in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars, to a 34-time felon and an adjudicated rapist so that they can get more. so that they can have it easier, so that they can have more influence, so they can be more fucking powerful. That dwarfs any kind of issue you should have with a $25 million wedding. They literally propped up a rapist so that he could run that country into the ground and force ICE agents into car washes and homes and daycares and schools and movie theaters and restaurants to hurt people they're trying to sell products to hurt people they share a country with. And that's the unforgivable thing. Jeff Bezos, to me, is persona non grata, just like Elon Musk. There are two different aspects to this, though. You're talking about, the autonomous aspect of this, of being one of the richest guys in the world. Is a $25 million wedding? Like, would I do it? No. But it would be pretty, if I had that kind of money, I'd throw a pretty nice fucking wedding. But like, if Jeff Bezos magically sent me a golden ticket and a jet, one of those private jets, to come over to his wedding, I'd tell him to go fuck himself. I don't want to be in a room with anybody that thinks it's a good idea to donate money to a 34-time felon, a fascist, and a rapist so that they can have more when they already have all of it.
Couldn't agree more. The guest list, by the way, includes people like Elon Musk and Kim Kardashian. So that sounds to me like a good reason not to go. But, if you are invited, send us a video. Tell us what it's like. We'd like to hear from you on this.
I highly doubt anybody watching this Substack podcast is going to the Bezos Lauren Sanchez wedding.
If they are, if by any chance you're invited, let us know. We want to see. Yeah, we want the inside scoop. Story number 4 on the countdown today. The Senate is gearing up for a marathon weekend to pass Trump's massive reconciliation package, with 53 to 47 Republicans controlling right now the Senate. It's all hanging by a thread. The so-called one big, beautiful bill faces a crucial test as several GOP senators express concerns about cuts to social programs. This thing is going to go through. I mean, I just think it will. Despite the fact that Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Josh Hawley, all these people are saying that they have real problems with it, they're going to vote for it at the end of the day. We've seen this drama go on again and again and again. At the end of the day, when the Trump wants something, the GOP falls in line and delivers him what he wants. It's sad for every American who's going to be suffering enormous.
You think it's going to pass?
I think it's going to pass. Yeah,
really?
I think when he wants something and he says something, it's not him; it's the machine around him. They push it through, and there's enough people who are compromised inside the Senate. There's enough Congress people. A lot of people. There's a lot of dirt about a lot of those people hidden in some videotapes or in some vault somewhere, and
underneath the Resolute desk, probably.
Yeah, and when they need it, they pull those things out and they say, "You know what? You remember that time? You better pass this bill." Look, it's a terrible bill. It's going to cause a lot of chaos. But on the other hand, there's some of the key provisions have been taken out, partially because of the rules of the Senate, partially because they've just been untenable. So some of the more controversial things have been taken out. But still, the big stuff is Medicaid's going to be, hugely reduced, forcing people to be uninsured, more people dying, less availability to reach medicine or healthcare. That's a terrible thing. And then the deficit is going to keep ballooning. $5 trillion by the latest count for the Senate version of this.
I don't know that it's going to pass. I think there's a lot of people that are weighing in saying yes, it will, no, it won't. I've seen too many reports, specifically even today, and too many polls about the approval rating behind this bill, where you have lawmakers weighing in private going, we're not passing that. Like 27 or 28% of lawmakers that were polled said, yeah, they're not going to pass that. They would never say that publicly because they don't have a profiling courage whatsoever. And I think that this whole Iran, if it was fake nuclear attack on Iranian nuclear sites, enriching uranium, and the narrative around that falling down, and the canceling of a bipartisan classified briefing today, supposed to be today, because Donald Trump is largely to believe he has lied about Iran having a nuclear capable weapon at the ready in days if we don't go in, if we don't do this. He's been caught with his pants down. Putin has embarrassed him. You have a bunch of people in his own party now that are going, TikTok MF, like, we really need to see the intel that you have that doesn't side with the intel that Americans have, which, by the way, Donald Trump in the NATO press conference today said he believes Israeli intelligence and Iranian intelligence over U.S. intelligence at the moment. He literally fucking said that. So I think the temperature has changed back here. I mean, I'm shocked it got through Congress. Like,
Yeah,
shocked.
yeah. Get me
And
through the
because
house.
it got through the House. But if it passes, I'll be amazed. I just don't think that I don't think the temperature is the same as it was. I don't think Donald Trump, even in the last 72, even in the last week, in the last 13 days since this whole thing has started, MAGA has fractured. His base has fractured. People that supported him have been quiet, silent. Now they're starting to speak out. Thomas Massey went for it today. I don't know if you saw the JD Vance tweet where he's like, "Hey, how many VPs have this much excitement in their life?" And Thomas Massey replied to it. This is in his own party. Thomas Massey replied, and he's like, "You might want to ask Mike Pence about his last month in office."
Oh,
Like,
oh.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean,
Good line.
Donald Trump does not have a button down party of Trump GOP anymore. Because of Iran, the temperatures changed. People don't believe him. And there might be a real piper to pay if he indeed did make this shit up and took the intelligence briefing from two foreign countries over his own intelligence briefing when it comes to the action that he took, because real fucking people died in Iran. Like, those are real bombs. Right.
This is going to be interesting, the intelligence debate. We'll find out more, I guess, tomorrow. The briefing's finally going to happen. There's a real contest between Israel intelligence and American intelligence as to what was damaged and what wasn't. We'll get to that later in the show. I do think the bill's going to pass simply because I've seen this before. I think after first covering that first administration of Donald Trump, you saw the same rhythm all the time. We were always at the edge of something historic happening and him being stopped, and then it would always collapse. It always collapsed, and then at the end of the day, Susan Collins would chime in, "Well, I had to do it," or whatever. It's the same kind of theater. I think Congress is a bit irrelevant in this world right now, and that's a very unfortunate. I think what's really happening is we're centralizing all the power around Donald Trump, and so everything that happens in Congress, it matters optically, I guess, but at the end of the day, what he says goes, and the unitary presidency, which has been their big, or the unitary executive, which has been their big push, it remains intact. And I think that that's still going to be the case over the weekend, as people are going to get pressured to pass this bill. He needs a pass, or he has no agenda, nothing to claim for his first term. He really needs to have this done.
Well, that's not true. He has a bunch of things to claim for his first
Well,
term,
terrible
like
things,
destroying
not
the
good
U.S.
things.
economy, ruining
Yeah.
his relationship with Canada, making NATO spend 5% of their GDP. I mean, there's a lot to get to still in this five stack that we can attribute to him. And yes, it's not very good.
Yeah. The number 3 story: in a seismic political upset, 33-year-old Zoran Mamdani defeated Andrew Cuomo in the New York City Democratic mayoral primary, going from 1% to 32% support in a campaign that capitalized on voter frustration with the establishment. This is a big deal. Now, it doesn't mean it's over, just the primary. But, Cuomo's political life has sort of tanked.
That's
There's
a
no
political
more.
dynasty, the Cuomo family, right?
Yeah, it really is. And,
Was.
and this is really unusual for a city like New York City to be electing a real progressive, like someone who's really got these very deep-seated progressive roots, but also a Muslim in a very often characterized as a Jewish run city. This is a really big deal if he becomes the mayor.
Yeah. He will. I don't think, when was the last time New York elected a Republican as a mayor?
I guess, what's his name? Bloomberg ran as a
Bloomberg?
Republican.
He was a Democrat.
Was it a Democrat? Did he run as a
Yeah.
Democrat?
Like Ed Koch. Was Ed Koch a Republican?
Ed Koch was considered a Republican, I guess, but I don't even know if that's true. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah, and there's no one really on the other side.
Maybe Giuliani. I think maybe Giuliani was the last Republican to be elected. Yeah.
Bloomberg was an independent, Dimitri says. Anyway, okay, Giuliani, okay. Yes, thank you, Debbie, who promptly lost his mind. Anyway, I read a little bit about it yesterday. Polymarket had Mamdani in every major poll had him underwater when it came to Andrew Cuomo. Both of them were on the Democratic primary.
It was Michael Bloomberg, by the way.
Bloomberg was Republican? Okay.
Yeah, it was elected as a Republican in 2001 and re-elected in 2005.
But New York is incredibly Democratic. Now, what Zoran Mamdani did is he separated himself from corporate Democrats. He separated himself from the political machinery. And he went into boroughs after Trump won the election after he announced that he was going to run for mayor. That flipped to Trump, New York boroughs. It flipped to Trump, and he needed to understand why. And so he took a camera guy and he took a microphone and he went and interviewed hundreds of people to get the temperature of why. What was the purpose? Why did you vote for them? And Trump, what he did so effectively is he weaponized all the pain that poor New Yorkers are dealing with. Rent control, expensive groceries, city clog, violence, crime, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And New York is the most expensive city in the world, one of, if not the most expensive cities in the world, maybe North America, but yes. So, he did something very different, and then he separated himself from corporate politics, and then he just kind of kept telling people it really wasn't that fucking groundbreaking or earth shaking. He kept telling people, I'm not a politician. I'm a 33-year-old that's listening to you. And I'm going to freeze rent for X amount of years. I'm going to force people to sell groceries at a decent price. I'm going to provide social workers to NYPD and not defund the police, no matter what you heard, so that you can get busy fighting crime and we can free you up to do that. And we can have people that just go and deal with mental health issues. And he rode on that for months, separating himself from, the same people that put Donald Trump in office were firmly financially behind, like Bill Ackman, firmly financially behind Andrew Cuomo, firmly. And they lost. They lost because New Yorkers saw someone that wasn't cut from the same cloth. Listen, we can all pretend we're Democrats or we can pretend we're Republicans. Those days are over. Those days are over. You're either part of the fabric of a country like America that deserves for the corruption and the death and the profit taking and the greed to stop, or you're on the other team. You're either part of democracy or you're part of the kleptocracy. And Andrew Cuomo was part of the kleptocracy. He has been for years and years
Well,
and years and years.
He is certainly part of a very elite group of people that have run in the Democratic Party, especially in New York. But he's a Democrat, true Democrat, and his policies have been mostly left leaning, and I think he was a decent governor.
Don't you think he was a Democrat by opportunity more than he was anything
Look,
else? Because the way that he left politics was very undemocratic like.
Although it is very politician-like, especially in New York State and New York City, where politicians are quite corrupt. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. Albany is a very corrupt little place, and and a lot of the money flows through there. So a lot of these politicians are seduced by a lot of things that they should otherwise not be seduced by. But his politics have mostly been left of center, and I think Cuomo was a responsible sort of choice that could really lead the city in a direction that, the establishment would be comfortable with. I think what it's telling the Democrats is that there is a progressive wing that is desperately unhappy with the status quo. There's a progressive wing that is not satisfied with the Bidens or the Cuomos or any of the establishment class, and they really do want to go at the leadership on all levels. And I think that's a very true, realistic approach. And maybe it's the right approach, because right now we're doing the Democrats are sort of this pragmatic middle ground, and they're just do pragmatic things. They don't want to piss off.
They stand for nothing. They stand for nothing in my mind. Like when I think about the Democratic Party, it's like they stand for nothing. They just hope they'll get the runoff vote for people who are so grossed out by MAGA and Donald Trump. Yeah. But it never works. It never works because I think, the age of the internet, social media, the fact that we're always plugged in all the time, we see inauthenticity, we see greed, we see corruption, we see who's paying them. We see the lobby groups and big pharma and companies and countries paying, American leaders, lawmakers, policymakers. It happens up here in Canada too. There's a bubbling movement, and New York is ground zero for that, of anti-corruption versus corruption. And as people, we've been lulled into this idea in North America that we're part of this beautiful experiment. Yes, democratically we are. We really are. But the top 3% make 95% of the money in North America. The top 3% own 95% of the shit. Mm-hmm. That's and it's only gotten worse over the past 30, 40 years. The distribution of wealth is gone. It's been consolidated, which is why you can't afford a home, which is why you can't afford groceries. And Mamdani went out and said, I'm not that guy. And he brought receipts with him and he went and stood on those values. And the entire city of New York just decided, we're fucking done with corruption. Let's vote for this 33-year-old. It's a great, great story that has a lot of progressives going, okay, let's go and talk to him and his team and figure out a way we can get all the corporate politicians out of the Democratic Party and make it a real movement. Because, you're seeing AOC's rise to fame. You're seeing Bernie Sanders get 80,000 people at the Rose Bowl talking about oligarchs and how we got to stop oligarchs and greed. Because greed is the one thing that kills more people than anything else on this planet. And that is why Mr. Mamdani was going to be the next mayor of New York at the age of 33.
And that's a very telling point, especially his age, 33 years old. I think he really has galvanized Gen Z in a way that no other politician has been able to do in the Democratic Party. And I think it is maybe the path forward. The way the Democrats need to win is to present something that's really solid, that counters Donald Trump's MAGA vision, that talks to the same people, but offers them different kinds of solutions than just, war and more cuts and whatever it is that he's offering them. There's a way to be patriotic. There's a way to be building a great America, but still be very progressive. And I'm not a particularly progressive person, but I think unless the Democrats figure out how they're going to run in the next election as a unique, distinct voice, not just good managers or good pragmatic, managers that can sort of manage Donald Trump, we really need something that's really solid running against them. And we need younger leaders. At the end of the day, if Gen Z doesn't show up to the next election to support the Democrats, they're not going to get to win. And I don't know if AOC is the answer. Maybe she is. She might be. But we certainly need those kinds of figures where we need younger, more galvanizing people who speak to this generation of youngsters who are growing up in a world where they can't afford a house, can't afford their groceries, and are looking around for leaders, and they're all in their 80s and 90s.
Yeah, all in their 80s and 90s. And all of those leaders are trying desperately to weaponize all that pain to their advantage so that you can continue to make them kingmakers and oligarchs. Listen, there's a reason why Make America Great Again is a thing. There's a reason why Maple MAGA was a thing. And the reason why is because white America, white Canada, rich white guys are slowly watching, this movement. And they're like, wait, let's start a culture war so that we don't have to fight a class war because there's way more of them than there is us. So how do we do that? We do that by misdirection. We do it by lying. We do it by being mean. We do that by making Americans live in fear. We do that by sending ICE agents into car washes to apprehend and kidnap people. We do that by weaponizing religion. We do that by warping religion. We do that by telling people that, I'm the chosen one. And then all those dog whistles come home to roost, right? And again, you look at Mamdani, he did none of those things. Nothing had nothing to do with the culture war. It had nothing to do with LGBTQ rights. It was everything to do with, I'm going to stick up for the marginalized. I'm going to make life more affordable. I'm going to really try to stop crime and put social workers, help people with their mental health. And we're going to give this city back to New Yorkers. And it fucking worked. Like, he ran over Andrew Cuomo last night. The world was shocked. New York was shocked.
And that's partly because of the ranked voting that they do over there. But yeah, it's an incredible achievement. I love New York. I lived there for 10 years. It's my home, really. I'd love to still be there if I could. The reality of it is it's not as pricey a city, by the way, as Toronto. I find Toronto way more expensive than New York ultimately. And the affordability there is a problem, but it's not nearly as problematic as it is in Canada in some ways. So, but I just think the city is so vital to America. It's so vital to the future of America. It is the place where what I loved most about New York is that it was the center point for every major sector. It was fashion, banking, television, media, internet. It was all there in one place. And it sort of had this conversion point that made place really exciting. Exciting stuff was happening there all the time. I think it's lost some of that excitement over the years. It would be great if it became more affordable, so more young people could afford to live there and sort of re-energize the city. I think it's lost a lot of its creativity. But as it stands right now, it's a very difficult city to live in. It's empty for most of the time because of the new regulations about when people could drive their cars. It's very expensive, although not expensive as I said as Canada. But I think it's still the most important city in America, and it needs a revival. And it should lead the revival for the America as Donald Trump continues to try to turn us into an autocratic state.
Yeah, well said.
Number two, Daddy. This is the daddy thing. Did you see? Did you see this in NATO?
Mark Root.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Trump has now gone to NATO. He's very thrilled at securing the 5% of GDP defense spending for all these NATO countries. They'll do that by 2035. 5% is double that they originally had. At 2%, obviously, was the previous target. But in the midst of all of this, he calls this is the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte calling Trump "daddy" during a press conference, and he's been heavily criticized for it. I mean, it is kind of gross, and it's also really unbelievable that he's gone into NATO really defending NATO. He's sort of back in the club. And I don't know if that's because he's been able to maneuver the agenda for this particular NATO summit, so it's not as controversial for him. They've certainly sidelined Zelensky a lot. But this is sort of a new Donald Trump who seems to be more supportive of NATO than previously. It surprised everyone.
Yeah, let's go over a quick timeline. So, he tells everybody that Iran and Israel don't know what the fuck they're doing after claiming a fake ceasefire and after buying into this lie about Iran being days away and they didn't hit the target as they were supposed to, blah 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 blah. He's now public enemy number one, and he gets on a flight and he goes to The Hague, Brussels, for a NATO meeting with all the world leaders in charge of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay, Mark Carney's there. He's in the middle of the picture. He looks great. He shows up on the plane on the way over there. Before he shows up, they ask him about Article 5. Would you observe Article 5 if a NATO member said they needed help? And he was like, there's a lot of definitions to Article 5. There isn't. There's only one. There's only one. If a NATO country triggers Article 5, you're entitled to go and help them. You have to. It's part of being a member nation of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, has been since the Second World War. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the United States has been the only country that's triggered Article 5, and we all went and fucking helped him. So he then like vacillates as to whether or not, there's a lot of definitions. I like these guys are my friends. I'd help my friends. So he gets there, and they want to pin him on it. And there's a couple things going on when it comes to Mark Rutte calling him daddy. The warm reception he has received from people, whether it be, people that the Erdogans of the world or the Macrons of the world. And I'll get to a Zelensky meeting in just a second, because there's something else at play here. They want to pin him down. They want to assuage him. They want to bring him back into the NATO fold. As much of a douchebag as he is, as much of a lying felon as he is sitting in front of the world's biggest arsenal, right? He's sitting in front of the world's biggest army. And don't think for a second that that's not going to come in handy to NATO member nations should things go crazy. There is a behind the scenes, and I talked to someone in Carney's orbit last night. There's a real concerted effort, not to please him, but to make him feel welcome and comfortable and not ostracize him from being a member of NATO because of who he is and what he's done and his alliance with Putin. And so the comment you're talking about, UN Secretary General Mark Rutte sitting right next to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is explaining to a reporter, with Iran and Israel, sometimes you got to let the kids fight it out. And when they're done fighting it out, you step in and go, okay, it's time to stop fighting. And Mark Rutte, creepily, he's like, in his accent, I don't know where he's from, Sweden or Denmark or something. He's like, that's because daddy's home. Ha, 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 ha. And they all had a great laugh. But it sounded so fucking creepy that you're like, what the? But if that conversation, I didn't have that conversation last night with someone in Carney's orbit where, world leaders are really trying to get him on side and trying to speak truth to power and trying to get him to see that, you're slowly morphing into the wrong team, dude. Yeah. Because of, the need that NATO has to have all that armament, all that technology, the intelligence, minus Donald Trump. They're trying to work around him by being nice to him and trying to get him back on side so that he doesn't make another fucking terrible decision again.
Although it's really delusional. I mean, the fact that he's so deeply in Putin's pocket that I can't imagine, he'll be in any way ever supporting any action against Russia. Like, it would take a lot to turn this KGB agent who's been under the tutelage of Putin since the 1980s, to suddenly turn around and then prosecute a war against Putin. It's just, I can't see it happening. I mean, he's not going to have a road to Damascus conversion like that. It's not in his DNA to do that. But is it good that they're sort of appeasing him? I don't know. It is appeasement to me. At the end of the day, Donald Trump is turning America into an authoritarian state before our very eyes. We're seeing it every single day.
Yeah.
And he's being allowed to do it by the world, who is sort of, patiently waiting out this period of time, hoping that they actually get another election. They're not even going to get another free and fair election. This is it. If they're happy with seeing America turn into a fascist country with, everything that entails, well, go for it. But, what you're doing is really appeasing this guy. And we all know pretty clearly where he's going. And we all know exactly what's going to happen if we let him go there. But we're letting him go.
Yeah. I think, what's the lesser of two evils? You continue to isolate this guy. Do you continue to piss him off? Mark Carney has done the best job of trying to appeal to him without capitulating to him. If you watched his press conference with the EU Attorney General and the President of the EU, where they announced his deal with the EU and Canada's trade and security deal with the EU, he was very, very pointed about having reliable partners as the world changes, as alliances change. We need to do what's best for the EU. We need to do what's best for Canada. And he's also been very good, if you remember the G7, about letting Trump do his thing and then stepping in and shutting him down, but not pissing in his cornflakes. You know what I mean? Not embarrassing the guy, even though he just continues to embarrass him because he's so much better at this. He's a real statesman. And it's almost like every comment he makes, Donald Trump doesn't know if he's being insulted or if he's being encouraged or if Mark Carney just really likes him, thinks he's a great leader. Because he said something in the Oval Office when Carney was there that'll always stay with me. He's like, I really need to thank you for encouraging the free world to pull up their fucking boots when it comes to taking their sovereignty and national security seriously. That was not a, hey, way to go, daddy comment.
Yeah.
That was a, way to go, dickhead. That's exactly what that was. And so, I think there are different ways of assuaging him into a position where, you're not going to break up NATO. Because, listen, the most important country in NATO is the United States. It doesn't matter who's in charge of the United States.
Really is.
They are the most important country in NATO. And so, to do anything effective, you need them.
I just saw a New York Times breaking news alert, which made me laugh. So Edward Corristine is widely known online by his nickname Big Balls.
Yeah.
Has resigned from his position within the U.S. federal government. Corristine, a 19-year-old technologist, was a key operative in Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, an agency. We know what that is. He's no longer there. He's out. He's following Elon Musk. His last day at work was yesterday.
Yeah.
So bye-bye Big Balls. I mean, I don't know why it's a New York Times
It's a sad
alert,
day.
but
I thought Big Balls would have survived the purge. I really did.
Yeah.
He's in.
Yeah, he's leaving.
He's gonna make it.
It's interesting. His dad was something, or his grandfather was a famous KGB spy. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Maybe.
Number one on the countdown today is it's not showing up here. So I'll tell you what it is anyhow. So President Trump has claimed he obliterated Iran's nuclear program, but now there are dueling intelligence assessments, and they tell a very different story. If you believe the Israelis, well, a lot of significant damage was done to the nuclear facilities of Iran, but leaked U.S. intelligence suggests Iran moved its uranium stockpile before the bombs fell, and in fact, there was very limited damage. The Israelis say there's a 2-year setback of Iran's programs. The U.S. assessment, only a few months. There'll be a congressional briefing tomorrow after it was canceled on Tuesday. Trump is fuming about this. He posted something on Truth Social a while ago. I don't believe the Israelis on this one at all. I didn't believe them in the first place when they said that there was a nuclear threat happening. So they're making shit up probably to help him out, would be my guess.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot changed yesterday and then changed again. And if you remember kind of following that timeline,
Yeah.
he wakes up in the morning, demands a ceasefire, doesn't get one, swears on the White House lawn. Iran comes out and goes, oh, by the way, we still got all the uranium. We moved it ahead of time. Um, Russia and the scientists that are working in Iran to gain function into creating a nuclear weapon and enriching uranium. That magically was the only nuclear facility that was not hit. And Lev Parnas laid it out really well in a couple of blogs and conversations that he had with some people. How Donald Trump's failure was really him just being played, he thinks, by Vladimir Putin, him being played by Bibi Netanyahu. Because going back to our conversation about why people are being nice to him at NATO, the one thing I think every world leader and anybody who deals with Trump knows about Trump, he is such a sucker. He is so fucking vulnerable. He is such an egomaniac. He is so easy to sucker into doing something stupid if there's a promise of some kind of glory at the end of that rainbow, or money, or a hotel, or crypto. If you look at every scam, every corrupt allegation that's made against him in the past 5 months, it stems from that. Him being, partnering with certain people in, shitty corners of the internet world to make all kinds of fucking money. Him, deciding that our relationship with Ukraine is over and I really like Vladimir Putin. I talk to Vlad all the time. I mean, the temperature around him continues to change. But the truth of the matter is that I think Donald Trump doesn't have. I think dementia's at play here. I think his physical decline's at play here. I think a lot of people have talked about that. How he's just this old guy that's like yelling at clouds at this point in time. But he's really stuck to that one thing. Is like, what's the most important thing for me here? And again, I go back to the whole idea that the most important thing for him was to look like he was in charge of the free world, like he was the free world's cop. If you watched him in a press conference today at NATO, he was talking about all the wars that he ended, which he never did. He brought up India and Pakistan again. He brought up Israel and Iran. I ended that in 12 days. Dude, you fucking started it. Like, you know what I mean? Like Serbia, he's like magically taking like credit for stopping a war in Serbia. He's the only thing that matters to him is ego and his place in history and money. That's it. That's all that matters.
Well, let me add to that. I think it's got to do with his ego and money, but I think he's doing that in order to solidify his base. I think his base really believes that he is Jesus Christ or some sort of, second coming of something.
His base is dumb as fuck, dude.
I know, but he needs to keep appealing to them that he's some sort of magical hero. So he keeps reinforcing this, I've done all these incredible things. I'm such a hero. I'm such an amazing guy, because they believe it and he needs them. He ultimately really needs them. The piece that I struggle with here is people forget all the time that he's a KGB guy, that he works for the Russians. This is not some, we know this. I've reported it. There's details. There's former KGB staffers who've revealed this. This is not a surprise to anybody.
Yeah, they revealed his secret agent name was Agent Krasnov.
Yes, and I mean the reality of it is this guy, obviously, anyone who looks at what he does and his policy positions, he agrees with Putin on everything. So he works for Putin, and you can't
divorce that. Him. He wants to be him.
You can't divorce that. People they'll say, oh, he works for Putin only on this story. But on this story, like the big, beautiful bill, he doesn't work for Putin. Or on Iran, he doesn't work for Putin. He always works for Putin. That's the whole thing, is we have a Manchurian candidate in the White House whose entire goal is to push Russia and Putin's agenda. You got to keep that front and center of every time you do this analysis, because for me, it's like, you can't say, oh, well, Putin didn't know about what happened the last few days in Iran. Of course he knew. Oh, he's the puppet master. He loves controlling a war. He controls both sides. He had Iran on the one side. He had Bibi and Trump on the other. This is a perfect war for him. He gets to control the outcome. He gets to get exactly what he wants, and he makes America look bad, and and Iran look better. And this is
dude, he embarrassed America. Yesterday, watching Donald Trump side with Iranian intelligence, Israeli intelligence over American intelligence.
Yeah.
That was Putin.
Yeah.
It was just disown it all. And I don't think people understand how serious that is.
Yeah. And Tulsi works for Putin too. So that's how that
she's like, I don't believe her either.
Yeah, but that's why it got leaked today. That whole report got leaked to the New York Times and the CNN today. Who leaked it? Tulsi must have leaked it, or someone in Tulsi's world must have leaked it, or maybe the Russians did it on her behalf. So this stuff is going out and embarrassing America. But Putin's the guy, who's laughing all the way here because he's got everybody at his beck and call. He could do whatever he wants, basically, and he somehow has taken over America and right now seems to be unstoppable in terms of turning it into an autocracy. And, I still don't see anything that's going to stand in his way.
I think the only thing that's going to stand in his way are wild cards. I think that Donald Trump is still a wild card to him. I think he's stepped out of line a few times. I really do. I think he does. I think he has. I think the EU is a wild card. I think Canada's a wild card. I think Zelensky's a massive wild card. And I think the only people, and Lev said this in the podcast, the only people he's really afraid of are those people and the American public. One of the things and the reasons why he decided he wanted to bring the temperature down when it came to this war with Iran and demanded a ceasefire and lost his fucking mind is because he saw his popularity and approval rating plummet overnight, right? And that in itself is an indictment because the American people finally had enough of him when he attacked Iran, but a lot of them were okay with them watching him beat the shit out of their neighbors and send them to fucking concentration camps in El Salvador. Still doing that in the United States. That's still going on. And therein lies whatever expressed purpose or principle that Donald Trump chose to start a fake war, chose to wag the dog. Because what's happening in his country right now, people are dying, people are going broke, people are getting thrown into ICE vans and getting sent to El Salvador, getting kidnapped, getting beat up for existing, for being a member of the economy, for paying their taxes, for feeding people, for filling roles and jobs. All because Donald Trump doesn't like the color of their skin. All under a lie that these are all illegals and they're all in the country illegal. We got to stop. He's not doing that anymore. He's coming after you. And so, what a brilliant distraction, and even the negativity around the lie that he told about obliterating Iran's nuclear capability. I mean, that's front page news, not his approval rating, right?
Yeah.
Not ICE vans pulling up in front of churches, beating the shit out of pregnant mothers.
Yeah.
We're talking about this.
We are talking about this, and we still believe, some people still believe everything that comes out of the White House is just sort of gospel. But the truth of it is, we're being played day in and day out, and Putin has such control and mastery of what's going on that we are.
And if you pay attention, it's cartoonish. Like the lies,
it is cartoonish.
They're so unbelievable and so stupid. It's cartoonish.
That's Russia. That's Russia. They'll make up any shit. You spend a lot of time studying the Kremlin and you realize that they'll push anything out as long as it clears their name and makes them look good. They don't care what the lie is. They'll push out the lie. People start to expect the lie. It's just so un-American to go through this. And here's the president of the United States lying about starting a war and why he did it. But I think what we saw yesterday was him blink. I think in the middle of all of this, when he realized his popularity was tanking and
MAGA's fracturing. I've pissed off Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah. What do I do?
And, he looked around at his business partners there, Vladimir Putin and Bibi Netanyahu and the Iranians, and he said, I'm out, I'm folding. And that means you all fold. And that's what he basically did because he thought, he blinked at, this is a very, very expensive poker game for America. And
one that has murdered people in faraway lands.
Yeah.
Those are real bombs.
But at least in that moment of blinking, we saw the reality. We saw the alliance between these autocrats. We saw exactly the foolishness of this exercise because it wasn't a real war. It was just a performative war, and we got to see it. We got to actually hold our to see how this happens, and that to me was a really clarifying moment in this administration that was really helpful. And that is the Fivestack for today. DeanBlundell.substack.com has most of the stories on here today that we've been talking about. You can read about at DeanBlundell.substack.com. It's one of the best reads on Substack, so please check it out. You can also find mine at narrative.org, NARATIV.org. You can read my analysis on what really happened yesterday and how Russia really is holding the cards there. And coming up in just a little bit, and maybe in 10 minutes or so, I'll be back with the lovely Olga Lautman for the Trump Tyranny Tracker, a late edition today because we missed the 2:00 show. So that's coming up in a bit, so stick around for that. Anything, Dean? You want to send us off in a good way?
No, I had a great time today. Deborah
Good.
Pizzato, thank you very much for stopping by. PJ, um, Mike, all of you. I mean, it continues to blow me away. We've had, today we've gotten a chance to communicate with thousands of people. Not possible if we don't have subscribers. We're so grateful for every one of them. So Zev and I have matched an offer that for the month of June. You can join us and get a lifetime at mine anyway. A lifetime. I think you did yours as well.
Mm.
35% off for the month of June. If you resubscribe next year after joining us for a year, you get that 35% off again for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Never been cheaper. It's never been a better time to build community. Listen, we're building a movement and a community with like-minded people. It's about democracy. It's about you. It is about human rights, fundamental, basic human rights. It's about Canada and America locking arms and making sure we continue to talk to each other and stay together. So, subscribe, bring us all together. Let's all stay together and let's all have a wonderful day. And thanks for spending some time with us again today.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to Michael Cohen being on the show, so we should get that going.
I'll
Cheers,
send him a
everyone.
text. Yeah, me
Cheers,
too.
everybody. Have a good
Bye.
day. Bye.